Well, hello. I'm going to hope that you can hear me and that I'll get this camera set right. Ooh. Ha! Did that make you dizzy? Okay. This is the first time I've done this, so you guys will have to bear with me on some of my technical imperfections, shall we say. Good to see you. I'm looking at my workstation, which shows me who's watching, and the back of my phone, which is shooting me, and I'm going to be showing some slides in a bit on my laptop. So it's sort of like a little cockpit up here in my workstation area. I am Jane Albright. Thank you for being here. David, you've been in this room, so I know you know exactly what I'm about to show y'all, and Jennifer and one other. I wonder who the one other is. Ruben, hi. I'm so glad you guys came because this isn't fun unless you have an audience. As I said, I'm Jane Albright. I wanted to start doing some Oz Live events on the Oz Club's webpage, Facebook page, because I'm real involved in the Oz Club. I take over as president in August, and I'm really eager to help build our community more using Facebook. So I figured I'd start by approaching Victoria Calamato. I hope you watched last week. Well, we all watched The Wizard of Oz together with her. In a couple weeks, we'll be watching Return to Oz together with her. And in the interim, we'll have individual people not doing a watch-along, but just talking about something. And tonight, it's me. My Oz collecting began with the Oz books as a child, and I won a book collecting contest when I was in college that kind of threw me into the world of exhibiting. So what I'd like to do, if y'all don't mind, is I'm going to fire up a little PowerPoint and show you some images of kind of what my history with Oz exhibiting has been, because that might give you a little bit more perspective on how I came to be doing this exhibit here in Kansas City. Give me a second. I should have worn my I should have worn my reading glasses. Here we go. Play slideshow. I need to view it full screen. Okay, now we're going to go dizzy again while I move the camera. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Oops. The exhibit in question that I'm showing you tonight is at the National Museum of Toys and Miniatures in Kansas City, Missouri. I have exhibited there before, and I was really delighted to have the opportunity to do this again. But I want to give you a little background and kind of lead up to it. My first exhibit was at the University of Kansas when I won this book collecting contest. The Spencer Research Library, after winning the contest, put me in a exhibit, let me get a little better angle here, that wound up being on campus for a year, and I loved it. I loved having questions and people saying, you know, children saying more about Oz than the MGM movie, and it was just a really terrific time for me. It was also an experience where a professional library staff had an existing space, and they set up the displays and took care of everything. All I needed to do was provide the material. Later, this is about 10 years later, in 1989, I had an opportunity to combine my material with the collection of my friend Todd Machin. And again, we turned over all of our material to the folks doing the exhibit, and they were responsible for all of the display and setup. In this case, however, rather than the kind of formal signage and exhibit the museum environment of a library, we were in a shopping mall, and they just crammed everything they could get and filled things all over the place. So we just had, it was a really fun experience again, but quite different from working at the Spencer Library. There wasn't signage unless we provided it. It wasn't quite as orderly, but it was a fun way to exhibit. Then there are other kinds of exhibits I've done. This was when I put all of my sheet music out at an Oz Club exhibit in Fayetteville, Fayetteville, New York, back in 2008. In this case, you know, again, it was an empty room and big tables, and a couple friends helped me. We laid out all the sheet music. We unrolled some mylar across the top of it so it wouldn't get too fingerprinted, and it was there for a weekend. This is the kind of exhibit that you would likely see if you were at an Oz Club event. but it's also the kind of thing that just goes up for a weekend and then it needs to be gone. Because it's just for, again, a one-day thing. I've also done some exhibits where I was responsible for, again, putting the exhibit together, although at least I was in a museum environment and had cases, as opposed to just kind of the pile of stuff that has happened in some of these environments. I'm doing too many things at once here because I'm trying to find if any of you guys are giving me comments on my computer. This was an exhibit that was just a wall, and I think this was all international posters and flat pieces. This exhibit was one I did last summer, which I loaded 6 cases that were rolled in and out of position during an exhibit at the Muni in St. Louis. Hi everyone, Mark, look at you guys. Oh, I'm so glad I have friends checking in. Mark and Joe. Oh, Joe, your work was fantastic. I'll show it to people shortly, I think. Okay, I understand, Joe. You're secretly on your phone. It's good to see you, and I'm glad you came. Anyway, let me get back to exhibiting here, or we'll be here all night, and I promised to just keep this as short as I could. Another exhibit, this was one where, again, it was all me putting everything up. I had a massive big room. Actually, it was kind of like 4 rooms. The corners all met in one area, and I just loaded in all kinds of stuff. This was what I considered material that you might find in a child's bedroom. Another kind of exhibit, another exhibit in that same space where I had lots of things from different unusual productions of The Wizard of Oz that were not as familiar to people as the MGM movie. Let's see, moving along. Here was an instance where I was in a library again, a much more formal environment, lots of signage. It was supposed to be educational. People were really supposed to figure out what they were looking at, but I loaded it again into the cases myself. So there's just a lot of different kinds of exhibiting. Sometimes you do all the work and you hope for the best, you provide everything, and sometimes you have a professional staff. Sometimes the professional staff is doing this, heaping miles and miles of stuff up behind glass for you and making it available to the public, and other times it's a much more formal environment. This exhibit, for example, at the same library where I exhibited back in '77, this was one I did in 2014. The library actually bought a plastic extrusion machine that created individual, perfectly sized props, stands, for all of the books and material in this exhibit. I mean, they just went to great lengths to make a really extraordinary environment. So all of this background, I've done at least 25 exhibits that I can remember, brought me to where we are right now. The National Museum of Toys and Miniatures began in this mansion, and the first time I exhibited here, back in 1989, the mansion was all there was to the museum. They would take every room in the space and an eclectic mix of cases and framing materials and just load everything in as tightly as they could. Every little bit of space counted. If there was a window, they'd put a bookshelf in front of it to fill the bookcase and block the light. The museum's not like that anymore. They've been through 2 major expansions and renovations. In this image, what you're seeing is on the far right-hand side, that little bit, this right here, that's the side, the north end of the original mansion. Everything else since that has been built on, and that's the entrance right in the middle. The old mansion is now used as private venue space, as offices, as meeting spaces, and it's no longer it's no longer the area where they actually display the collection. Now, the museum is handicap accessible. All the lighting has been made UV safe. It's environmentally controlled for moisture and heat and temperature and all those things. There are elevators in addition to the stairs that you see right there on the far right. The cases are custom made and designed often to suit the specific items that are going to be placed inside them. There's signage everywhere. It's just really a beautiful museum. There are interactive components like this piece in the middle that's sort of a giant tilt table. And they have one gallery. Oh, I'm sorry, here's one more look of the second floor Center Hall area. The one gallery that when they showed it to me to see if I'd put Oz in here, it was a pedal car exhibit, and it looked kind of like this. Well, I took a look at this room and thought, well, sure, I can fill that space with Oz. I've got plenty. We can make this great. And I proceeded to start making lists of hundreds of items that I wanted to fill in the space. And then they asked something that no one had ever asked before, and that was if I would be interested in borrowing Oz material from other collectors instead of limiting the display to my own collection. Boy, did I. I would love to borrow from other collectors. Because I've been involved with International Wizard of Oz Club now since, gosh, 1972. I know collectors all over the country. I've seen a lot of collections firsthand. I know different things that people have. I've celebrated with a lot of people on the acquisition of different pieces to their collections that particularly mattered to them. Oh, Addie, you guys are answering questions that I should be answering. What collectibles would you consider essential to almost any Oz theme exhibit and why? Oh, that's a good question. Like with this one, I knew we had to have ruby slippers. When you have the public coming to something, it can't just be a bomb and book exhibit. I mean, it can be in a library, but if you're doing a big pop culture museum like this, people are going to expect to see a lot of MGM. And for this exhibit, what I wanted to do was gather all, since it was a toy museum, I wanted to gather all of the toys that had been made prior to the 1939 film to represent the toys that were made in conjunction with the release of the 1939 film, and then to represent pretty fairly subsequent pieces. So I began searching. This is my list of folks we have to thank who loaned pieces. I started with Wally Kruger because I knew I could borrow, if he would let me borrow a lot from him. Just between the two of us, we'd have a fantastic exhibit. And then I started asking individual people for specific pieces that helped me meet some of the objectives I had going on in here. Over the Rainbow, Toys from the Land of Oz is what they named the exhibit. It opened January 14th and will be running through August 20th. This is the entrance. When you turn the corner to start walking into the first room, you're confronted with a great big enlarged map of Oz that winds up being a pretty fun photo op for anybody who's there. The first room, which is on the left of the entrance, is where we have the oldest toys, what I think of as the pre-1939 material, anything that is really an expression of L. Frank Baum and his books. Baum's bust, contributed by Bill Beam to the exhibit, is paired off with a little cribbage board there in the foreground. That actually belonged to L. Frank Baum. That little cribbage board is one he and Maud played. One of his daughters-in-law sold it to Warren Hollister back in the day, and it remains a part of C. Warren Hollister's collection. So I was excited that we could start off with Baum and a toy. We then moved to a case of first edition Oz books and some advertising pieces that were used to promote the Oz books. I kind of felt like advertising pieces was a nice, colorful way to show how they captured children's attention with the Oz books as they were being produced. I'm especially delighted to have this colorful Scraps. She is a wooden cutout piece that was used as a point of purchase display in bookstores back when the Oz books were being published. A wall display, and they used PDFs on this because the newspaper pages I gave them were so fragile they were reluctant to hang them. On the left is a Queer Visitors from the Marvelous Land of Oz story in which the Oz characters go to Santa Claus's workshop and proceed to make toys of themselves, therefore creating the very first Oz toys. So I thought that should be a part of this display. The piece on the right is a Thanksgiving page from the same comic strip that was run in the Kansas City Journal. Moving along from that, we wanted to show how the Oz books, in addition to being full-length novels, there was other material that could be read about Oz. And in addition to these collections of short stories and individual short stories, the Wogglebug book, which is sort of a graphic treatment, similar to a graphic novel today, the Jigsaw Oz books and the Little Oz books and Jigsaw puzzles were produced by Jell-O. That particular set came from Wally Kruger's collection. That is one of those things on my short list that I really want.
a box set sold in the PBA auction last week for $3,000. So I kind of suspect it's going to be a while before I have a box set to call my own. I really appreciate Wally letting us put his in this exhibit. Jell-O would have been the first company to do corporate sponsor to sponsor anything Oz. They sponsored a Jell-O radio show that ran on the radio. The earliest toys we have on exhibit, in this case, that Scarecrow doll, I have two of them, Mel and Fred. I can tell you about their names later if you'd like. I put Mel in because he is the most colorful of the two that I have. He and the two little dolls lying at his feet, a Patchwork Girl and a Scarecrow, were made by the Oz Toy Manufacturing Company. In addition to the Scarecrow and Patchwork Girl, the little flat sort of oilcloth ones, which again are things I dream of maybe owning someday. It's because of Wally and Peter Hamp that we were able to display these. There's also a Tin Man and a Jack Pumpkinhead in that set, and then the large Scarecrow doll were made by that company. There's also the little Ozmite pin down there in the front, and I think in my next couple of slides I wanted to show you what I'm really thrilled to have. The Oz Toy Book is just so exceptionally rare that to even have a copy for this exhibit was something I was just thrilled to be able to offer. But this one is even more important because this is the one that L. Frank Baum gave his granddaughter Ozma. So we have Ozma's own copy of the Oz Toy Book loaned by her daughter Gita Marino to our exhibit. And off to the other side of the case we have the Woozy. This little Woozy was produced by L. Frank Baum to promote his Oz Film Manufacturing Company film of the Patchwork Girl of Oz. And what particularly delights me with the Woozy, this one is loaned to us by Bob Baum, he was the first toy ever made to promote any film. I have not been able to find any film earlier than 1913 where a toy was made to offer children as a way to attract them to the movie. Then in the foreground there on the left are two of those litho horns. One is mine and one's Curry Corbin's. One of them has a handle on the side, so it's sort of like a bugle. The case aside from that, we introduced the idea of Oz Games. The Wogglebug Game of Conundrums, which is facing away from the camera in this shot in the back, was what we always thought was the oldest Oz game out there. And then the wonderful Game of Oz, we put a couple variants in this display, came out in 21, 2, 3. I have too much on my mind to remember. 23, I believe. But 21 and 2? Oh, I'll stop. Anyway, we grouped these pieces together. I just have always thought it's just an exceptionally beautiful game, and I was glad that we could include it. Kind of more important to me, though, was the Wally the Comical Lion going to the Land of Oz, which we borrowed from Diane Breitenstein. It was something I had only seen on the back cover of the Baum Bugle, and I had no idea what size it was, what it looked like. I knew nothing about it except that it existed. Similarly, the Scarecrow of Oz answers questions by radio, there in the upper left-hand corner. We borrowed that from Mike Gessel. I only know a couple collectors at all who have it, and I was awfully pleased that Mike let us borrow it. That was the last piece that I was missing when I was looking at my checklist of pre-39 toys, and I just felt like I had to find it. One of the things I wanted to borrow for this were these rules to a Wogglebug game that you see in the top of this picture. These aren't rules to the Wogglebug Game of Conundrums. This is a different Wogglebug game, the Wogglebug card game, and Bill Campbell found these rules on, they're like a little piece of newsprint. It's been folded repeatedly. It's incredibly fragile. But if you look at the illustrations of the cards that are pictured on the left, you see that those aren't the same cards as the Wogglebug Game of Conundrums cards. Those are just little bits of text, questions and answers. They're not the same as the Wogglebug lesson cards that are mounted directly below it. The lesson cards are large and have information about the character that's pictured on the front written on the back. And this, in this case, because of the Warcalas, thank you very much, loaning a Tin Man card, we're able to show you how the Wogglebug cards work. So this Wogglebug game was a whole new thing, although Bill Campbell, who owned this, was aware that Scott Cummings also had some Wogglebug cards, so we assumed they were the cards that went with the game, but they're not. These are the Wogglebug cards, yet another Wogglebug game. So we're able to represent all of these fun Wogglebug pieces in the exhibit and share with people the discovery that the Wogglebug game of conundrums is not actually the oldest Oz game out there after all. We have a small case of material tied to early stage and screen productions. The framed piece in the background is L. Frank Baum's signed copy of a program from the Fairy Log and Radio Plays when he took a cast and orchestra and films around the country to put on a travel log about Oz. We have sheet music and Edison cylinder from songs from the musical extravaganza, some souvenirs there in the middle that were also distributed to audience members at various productions. And the Patchwork Girl of Oz, this is a program from the silent film that we borrowed from Atticus Ganaway for this exhibit. It's the only copy I know of anywhere, and I'm delighted to have it. The little snack box here, I decided just today to add this to the program tonight because a panel cut from the side of one of these boxes just recently appeared on eBay. There apparently were ones for different characters. In the Scarecrow one, the Scarecrow's on the pole, and then you open the door and he's off the pole. And I've also seen that there's one of the Cowardly Lion getting slapped and bursting into tears, and one of the Wizard behind the curtain and in front of the curtain. And those are the ones I know about. There are probably more out there waiting to be discovered. This is a PDF. Again, the full-size page was so fragile they were reluctant to frame it, of the only surviving copy of the Tick-Tock Man of Oz Traveling Company's poster that Curry Corbin loaned us for this exhibit. It's just a spectacular piece, and it's large. When you're standing next to it, you just see all kinds of beautiful detail in the artwork. I was thrilled to be able to include this. The Tick-Tock Man of Oz did go through Topeka, Kansas. I have a lot of reviews and notices from the Topeka paper about its appearance, so it could have been in Kansas City. I haven't confirmed that, but I do know it at least made it to Topeka. We jump a few decades from early stage and screen to Oz Peanut Butter, which was first introduced in 1939. We have, actually the can is not cropped into this picture, it would be on the far right, but we have some interesting jars of different ways that the peanut butter was packaged, tin pails in a couple different sizes, a mobile, coloring book, a little tiny writing pen at the base of that one thing, if you can see it, that Bill Beam loaned us. And then since they were similar in function, the Seal Test cottage cheese glasses, 4 of them, were added into this case as well, and the museum used this as an opportunity to talk about Oz in the grocery aisle, as they called it. That leads us to the 1939 introduction. The wall that has these 4 cases, 2 of them are specific to 1939 merchandise, and the others are subsequent material. In the doll case, we have My Little Ideal Dorothy, who's just the sweetest doll in the world. I wanted her for so long, and I remain just absolutely thrilled to have one. I do have the Ideal Strawman doll, but I borrowed this one from Wally Kruger instead because this one belonged to Shirley Temple. And I just think nothing is cooler than to know that, you know, the most popular child star in the world loved Oz. She had all the Oz books. She had Oz dolls, even as a youngster. And my gosh, I sound like I'm 80 using a word. Anyway, and Wally bought this from her personally. So I was delighted to have it. The little rubber Tin Man, one of those just sold on eBay today. I've seen like 3 sell in my life, including my own. A lot of those little rubber toys got turned in for rubber drives during World War II, so they just didn't survive. And of course the figural soaps really didn't survive because kids took them right into the bathtub. The Hardy Lion is one of the rarest 1939 Oz pieces out there. I only know a few collectors who have them. Wally Kruger bought this one, and in the auction that listed it, it was paired off with this little Tin Man doll. And I just assumed that some mom made her little girl's composition doll a Tin Man suit, and Wally called me as he was unpacking it, very, very old leather painted silver to make up her costume. And then he turned over the little stand that came with her, and it was marked prototype. So we have every reason to believe that this little doll was a prototype of a toy that might have been produced to complete the 4-character set in 1939, but somehow didn't make it to manufacturing. But we have one. It survived, and it's in Wally Kruger's collection. The other 1939 case includes the floor sweeper. Anyone who knows me knows I've wanted that floor sweeper forever. This one's Valerie Dunaway's. The hangers up there are Wally Kruger's. There's a little watch right in front of those hangers. See that? Jan Vanderwall loaned us that. And what I particularly remember about that watch is Wally has a picture of his mother wearing one when she was a teenager. If only he still had that one. There's a lot of wall pieces. I'm not showing you all of them as we've gone through this, but they generally mounted things like this, squeezed in between glass. They really jump out and are bright and colorful. I'm sorry that the Plex cases and the glass cases everywhere throwing so many shadow lines around, but I think you can still get a feel for how this comes across in person. Then we have some newer material in the next couple of cases, things that I either thought were particularly cute or that they just felt would be something we should show. They wanted to use Madame Alexander dolls. I've never paid much attention to Madame Alexander dolls. I buy them when I see them in estate sales or if there's a lot and I get a few. And I didn't realize until they asked me to provide some and I started pulling all mine out to see which ones I wanted to use that I have 50. Considering that I don't even mean to collect them, that's a little excessive. But I love the little apple tree doll, and I think Dorothy throwing the water on the witch so she melts is one of the more clever ways to do a doll scene with Madame Alexander's. The Hazel marionettes we have on the wall. Hazel was a Kansas City-based company, and a couple of them, the straw man anyway, that I had in his original box, came packed with a little script. In the Land of the Wizard Witch that is sort of an adaptation of the Wizard of Oz. They didn't do a Tin Man, so they couldn't create a Tin Man, a full Wizard of Oz story, but they did a little adaptation. It included a little boy doing a lot of stuff that probably would have been the Tin Man's part had they made one. I'm breaking up. Brody, I'm sorry. I wonder what I can do. I'll just keep trying and we'll see what happens. Then the case that everyone takes pictures of, 2 costumes from 1939, an Emerald City jacket from Wally Kruger's collection and a Munchkin jacket, a Munchkin soldier jacket loaned to us by the Oz Museum in Wamego, Kansas. Also, those little Arabian slippers, the replica pair on the left, we really wanted to do something with the ruby slippers because it's awfully expected in an exhibit like this, and having, a multi-million-dollar pair to borrow wasn't an option. So we turned to replica pairs made by Randy Struthers. Randy is who made the pairs that the Smithsonian's Keep Them Ruby program will be giving people who donate at that especially high level. And he replicated the Arabian test pair that was in the last shot, the bugle bead pair, which is the highest on the top here, the pair in the middle, which is an authentic replica of how the final design was executed. And then down at the bottom, you see that big piece of red fabric. To make the shoes, a piece of red fabric is put on a loom. The sequins are sewn in place in that sort of a horseshoe shape. And then that is cut out and laid over a shoe. So in case you've ever sat there and thought someone was sticking a needle back and forth through a shoe, no, that's not the way it worked. They do a fabric overlay and put it together that way. Randy has gone to extraordinary lengths to replicate these shoes. He has custom-made bugle beads that are narrower than anything you can buy on the market. He had custom-made sequins to be the right color and to age appropriately, and he just makes some really wonderful shoes. So we were excited to have this little opportunity to explain a bit about how the shoes are made. Oh, here's another case that I was excited about. I did a piece for the Bomb Bugle a few years back about the 4 string heads, Dorothy, Scarecrow, Tin Man, Lion. And at that point, I thought the 2 witches were just sort of like an urban myth because I'd never seen them. And no one had seen, to my knowledge, either the wizard's head or Toto. So I'm particularly delighted to have these and to be able to have them all together. Both Toto and the Wizard are Wally's. I don't have those two, but I had the other 6, so we were able to put the string heads together for the first time. They're just the ugliest thing. Poor Dorothy. My heart breaks for Judy Garland if she ever saw that depiction of her. And the Scarecrow's pretty scary. I mean, the witch is supposed to be scary, but that poor Scarecrow. Then that leads us to the next big room of the exhibit. This is where we have all of the post-39 material gathered for the most part. The costumes are real standout pieces that draw the eye and beautifully pulled off the look of this whole room. First we have the Mego pieces. I was in high school when these came out, so I got them then and kept them. Loved playing with them as a child, and I know a lot of other people did too. Here were the first Munchkin dolls ever made, with the little Mego Munchkins, and they're all arranged in this case. We wanted to do something with Broadway's production of The Wiz. There are no toys associated with it, however. So I turned to John Mason, who bought this Yellow Brick Road chorus member's costume at a Broadway flea market back in the 70s and used to wear it to Halloween parties. The gloves down at the bottom were Tiger Haynes Tin Man gloves from Wally's collection. And then behind that, the Wiz film also didn't have many toys, but they did have some Halloween costumes. So here's the lion Halloween costume associated with the Wiz movie. Then the pieces from Wicked, Chistory the little flying monkey, a hand puppet of the time dragon, and a couple of magic wands. Fairuza's shoes, this replica pair was made by John Henson, who was a pretty beloved member of the Oz community for many years and was loaned to the exhibit by Aaron Schultz. And it is positioned right next to Mombi's dress, which is being displayed in public for the first time. It's just absolutely spectacular. It is full of just all sorts of wonderful metallic accents and overlays. It's just a very complex, layered costume, and really, really a treat to see. Next we have a little bit of Return to Oz toys. I would have liked to have put a lot more Return to Oz toys in here, but the museum kept saying, this is enough. So we had to stop. One advantage for me of getting to put these pieces of mine in here was my little Dorothy doll she'd had a bad hair day, let's put it that way, before she came to me. And in the process of setting up the exhibit, the museum asked their doll stylist, I guess you'd call her, to do a little bit of rebraiding and work on her hair, so she's looking prettier than she's ever looked before. Sweet little freckled nose. She's just a darling doll. She was made in Germany, and there aren't many of them floating around in Oz collections that I'm aware of. We have a few pieces in a Dick Martin case. Dick was instrumental to the success of the International Wizard of Oz Club in so many ways. Illustrated for Riley and Lee, eventually wrote a few novels of his own. And I was really pleased that we were able to work a little bit of Dick into this exhibit. He was quite a man. Then we have a cartoon case for Off to See the Wizard. There's probably more stuff in here than anywhere. I kept getting calls the day they were setting up the exhibits because they'd realized that things they had in other cases all actually belonged in this one. So we got fuller and fuller. But Off to See the Wizard was a really successful television cartoon, and it just generated a lot of merchandise. Then the other cartoon case was for Tales of the Wizard of Oz, and I absolutely dream of finding Dandelion someday. He is one of my, trying to get this shot lined up better, he is one of my absolute ultimate holy grails to find. Dot and Socrates are in here with him. There was not, Rusty the Tin Man wasn't produced in a doll, although there is a photocopy of a design for one that you can see in the Wizard of Oz Collector's Treasury. Another case has the Procter & Gamble puppets. They came, in this case, the puppet show is on the background, and the ivory snow box behind the puppets has a puppet still in it and shows you how you would go about getting the puppet theater. On the wall we have a little copy of an ad about the toilet paper that you would send in a label and $1 to get these plush Oz dolls. What you got was the blonde Dorothy in the orange dress not the little brunette Dorothy in the blue dress. The only way you could get this doll was by following the Yellow Brick Road on the top of Beech Mountain in North Carolina, where she was sold exclusively to visitors at the Land of Oz. Billy Ferguson loaned it to us for the exhibit, and I'm thrilled to have her in here. I'd never even seen her before. The remaining cases in the middle of the room have just kind of fun stuff that kids my age got to play with when we were younger. Paper dolls. The reporter from the paper who covered this was particularly struck by this early 70s paper doll set with Dorothy in her leisure suit and the Tin Man in his bell-bottoms. The Wizard of Oz on ice, I particularly wanted the horse of a different color because that's the only toy of that character that I'm aware of. And then the little record player at the upper right that came out in the 50s has the Tin Man and Scarecrow on it. I have two of those. This one's smaller. Willard Carroll gave it to me, and since he's had such a profound, extraordinary impact on my collection, I was really pleased to be able to include something in here that had been a gift from him. My other one is almost twice as long and has a big zoetrope on the side, so it was much easier to use the smaller one. The international case doesn't have many toys in it, which is particularly amusing because they didn't want to do a case because they said it would be all books. So I shot 29 pictures of clusters and groups of Oz toys from around the world that we could have instead. And then when I sent them all over, they were so intrigued by the books that they wound up using them instead. So go figure. But we have a Japanese pop-up book right in the middle from Sabuda. Willard Carroll's Oz Kids videotape tucked in there. You see the little tin boy on the cover. I did a mix of translations that have MGM and storybook influences on them. One of the things that's really fun for me about this case, you know, I only have the Israeli Dorothy doll because Gili Bar Hillel got it to me. I bought the little French translation from Freddie Fogarty. I bought the Persian translation from Dick Rutter out in California. All of these pieces, when I see them, I'm reminded of whatever person it was out there that helped me acquire them. So even people who didn't directly loan to the exhibit are nonetheless reflected in it when I see it and think of them. Then they have a big photo op in the corner where people sit in that little hollowed out edge right in the middle and fall asleep in the poppies and take their picture to share wherever they like. We did have an opening event. They had a little ribbon cutting. It's one of those opportunities where I get to get my husband in blue gingham, which doesn't happen very often. Here are Bill Campbell and Atticus Ganaway, because we did invite everyone who'd loaned to the exhibit, and quite a few people were able to come, pointing at the bookmarks of the Scarecrow and the Patchwork Girl that they loaned to the exhibit. They were advertising pieces when the books were first being available. In this shot, over on the right, you see Bill Beam and Anita, his wife Anita, opening the door to this little area labeled Curious Characters from the Land of Oz. They created 9 little doors. They look kind of like a file cabinet, and there's a character name on the outside of each one, and when you swing it open, you see that character as depicted in the Oz Toy Book with a little bit of description about who that character was. Whenever I've been in this exhibit during the day, there are always children over there just open and closing those doors like, you know, it's their job. So, you know, I didn't quite understand how popular that would be, but gosh, it sure has been. Addie is now pointing to his lapel because he's wearing an Ozmite pin, like the one that's right in front of him inside that case. And this is just kind of another wide shot of how things look if you were kind of standing in front of the Emerald City Photo Op looking back. Oh, and here was a fun moment. Greg Foreman, my friend Melody's husband, hadn't even remembered this little Tin Man robot, but he had one as a child and went right home, and the very next day posted footage on Facebook of himself playing with it from home movies as a little boy. Susan Hall came up from Oklahoma, taking pictures. One of the things that was fun for me with this exhibit is some of these people who've loaned things have never had anything in an exhibit before, and other people could, you know, run circles around me from their exhibiting experience. But it was fun to get them all together and to be able to have a little bit of a party in the environment. that, oh wow, that, no, not quite the last. This might be my last shot in here. Another shot of the Mego dolls. The red box variant on the side is extremely scarce, and I begged and pleaded with them to include it because Wally was able to loan it for us, and I wanted y'all to get to see it since you can't even find pictures of that online. I think that's the end of the walkthrough, gang. Yeah, that's it. So let me flip this around. Try not to get too dizzy. Whoa. Okay, are we there? Are we shooting the sky, or is that about right? No, we're pretty high. Let me do a little bit of an angle. I can't. We'll just leave it there. That's really all I had to share today. Let me see if there's any questions in here that I need to be looking at. Did Willard ever get to open the museum? He's still planning on it, as I understand it. Hi, you're from Australia, Kelly. Bless your heart. Well, thank you for popping in. And Brody's yelling Tori, so I'm guessing Tori must be with us. How can... Oh, there we go. You're looking at the ceiling, which just sort of seems like a hard thing to do to you. Is that any better? A little? Maybe? So thank you, David. So unless... And you too, Mark. I appreciate it. Unless there's questions or something that I should be answering or trying to address, then we probably ought to call it a night. I've already been on 45 minutes, and I thought it'd only be here 30. But that's what I wanted you to see. And, some of you, I hope, will be able to make it to Kansas City between now and August and see it in person. But I realize a lot of people can't. So I was just glad that I had the opportunity to be able to talk to you a little bit on Facebook. Great job. If only I lived closer. I know a lot of people feel that way. Who loaned the soldier costume? That was from the Oz Museum in Wamego. And it's beside a regular Emerald City costume that was from Wally's collection. Trying to think if there's anybody I didn't mention who loaned to the exhibit. I tried to mention everybody as I went through and tell you what pieces came from them and what didn't. I think about 50 pieces overall on the exhibit were loaned from people or from collections other than my own. I went through at one point to try and count, but you're looking at a set of Ozkins or a set of 5 masks or a set of Valentines, and do you really count every individual object? Do you just count the whole lot? So I don't know, but I did come up with about 50 things that were elsewhere. Will it be archived? Scott, the museum doesn't have a plan to do a catalog or anything of it, so unless somebody comes up with something and pulls that off, there's no plan to my knowledge to do anything like that. So, have you ever been to the Oh yes, absolutely, I've been to All Things Oz. I was made a lifetime member. In, what year was it? In 14, I took what 1939 merchandise I had, partnered off with John Shershikin, who had things that I didn't have, and between the two of us, we had almost everything. And we put together a display of 1939 merchandise to celebrate the 75th anniversary during the Ostravaganza event. I've been there repeatedly. We had an Oz Club convention there in '08. It was in Fayetteville, actually, and then in Chittenango proper in 14. And prior to both those years and between them, I went regularly up to that event. It's a wonderful time, and the museum's great fun. So, I think that's it for today, gang. I'll sign off and let y'all do the next thing, but I really appreciate you stopping in and looking at the exhibit with me, and I hope we'll be talking more about it in the future, I guess. Thank you. Now, if I can find out how to sign off. Bye-bye.